Last week, we started the conversation about making money or what to charge with photography. And we'll do that again, slightly different this week. And I have yet another guest with me. This time, it's the one and only Jerry Ghionis. Hey everyone, Stephan here. I hope you're doing well. So last week we talked about pricing and we went through, the usual stuff. You have to assess your business. You have to know what running your business actually costs. And we don't go into all of that again today. So if you're interested, just watch the episode from last week. And we had a special guest on as well, who of course is slightly out of my price range, but he knows what he's doing, and that was Peter Hurley. So I thought, what are we going to do this week? Now, we talked about headshots and portraits last week, but of course, a lot of you are also interested in events, in weddings, and when I look through all the people that I could invite, there's actually only one name that comes up that does a little bit of everything and everything on a guru level. And I have him with me right now, and that is the one and only Jerry Ghionis. How are you?
Good, mate. Thank you so much. And thank you for pronouncing my name correctly. Very few people do that.
I think that you educated me on how to say your name about 100 years ago. And for all those people who just came back from a 30-year trip to Mars or something and have no idea who I'm talking to, let's just put it this way. This man is brilliant at portraits. He's brilliant at couple shoots. He's amazing at posing individuals, couples, groups, ranked as one of the top event and wedding photographers on the planet. But that wouldn't be enough for him. So he's also an incredible educator. He takes great pride in helping others achieve great things. When we talked 100 years ago, he said one thing that didn't leave me alone, and I'm thinking about it not every day, but nearly every day. And he said, extraordinary effort creates extraordinary results. And that is something that stuck with me. Now, if you want to add all of that, and I mentioned the guru part before, add a wicked sense of humor, and that's what you get. And that is Jerry Ghionis. Did I miss something?
Thank you, mate. I'm overwhelmed, but no, it's all good, man. I think my proudest achievement is my marriage, to be honest. So you probably left that one out. We'll be celebrating 10 years on Sunday.
Oh, wow. I had my wedding day 22 years on the 20th. So 2 days ago.
Oh, fantastic. Congratulations. That's amazing.
Yeah, same to you. So beautiful. Let's go straight to the point. The whole point of our conversation is how to price your services. Now, I personally separate it into kind of two boxes, if you want to say it like that. One is if you're a weekend warrior, if you work throughout the week at the bank and on the weekend you really enjoy your photography, this doesn't matter because you should do it for fun. Don't think about money. Think about the great pleasure of producing something, of creating something, of having a great time and making other people really happy. But then, of course, there's the other box. If you actually want to do this as a business. And that is a very different story. Now, I don't separate in terms of quality. I know a lot of amateurs who produce incredible work. So if I say the word professional, I never talk about the quality of photography. I talk about the business side of photography. How do you see this?
Yeah, I mean, look, obviously the word professional implies that you're charging for something, therefore you're a professional. And I think, yes, there's a lot of people out there that if you talk about professional quality, that it sort of meets a bit of a standard in the industry. You're rain, hail or shine, you're capable of producing a decent quality of work. Going back to what you said before, though, I have a bit of a difference of opinion in the sense that even if you're not doing it as a living and you're doing it from absolute passion, I at very, very least suggest that people charge at least to pay for their habit. So if there's people out there that do a lot of guys that I work with more than the girls, in the sense that are in, high-tech positions, like very technical, how do I say, like software engineering and things like that. And they're of a certain age, they've made a lot of money, and they've got this hobby for photography. But I'm like, well, why wouldn't you charge at least something to cover your costs of what you're doing? I think for me, the way that you can compete with anyone in the world, in a few ways, one way is being meaningful. As soon as you're meaningful, doesn't matter how good or great your photography is, you can actually transcend and actually make a lot of money. And certainly your business sense will far transcend your quality, because there's a lot of great photographers out there, but there's a big difference between professional in the business sense and then a novice in the business sense there as well. So, but over all the years, I often get a lot of photographers come to me that are seduced into the corporate world, and they just stay in that lane, and they make a lot of money, but they actually don't enjoy themselves. And there's this other thing. And then you've got the photographer who perhaps wants to charge, doesn't know how to charge, and then all of a sudden, you're that guy or you're that girl with a camera, come to the party, bring your camera, and then all of a sudden you become the Robin Hood of photography. And I find that that's where there's a disconnect. That's where it's a problem. For me, I do a lot of work pro bono, but under my terms. If you ask me, do my wedding for free or do my portrait for free, that's a hard no. But if under my terms, I find a really good cause or something that I really want to do for somebody, I will do it because I want to do it. But the minute you take time away from my family to immortalize moments for yours, well, you have to pay. Simple.
That's a really, really good way to say it. I guess my main point was to differentiate between, if you do it on the weekend, you don't have the pressure to make money. You don't have the studio rent that you need to pay. You don't have all the overheads that if you want to run your own business. It's a very different story. And I think we have to kind of look at both sides of the thing. Now, what you also said, I think is super important. The moment someone takes time away from your family, if someone comes to you and says, all right, I love what you do, I want to charge the same amount as you do, and I want to be a rich person, I want to live in Las Vegas, and I want to be married to a beautiful woman, how do I do this?
Well, first of all, I'm not rich, so let's just put that aside. Second of all, it's working your ass off. I mean, at the end of the day, I've been committed to one craft. Well, a few, I guess, but it's all resulted around photography. I knew I wanted to be a photographer at the age of 15. I'm 47. I did my first paid professional gig at 20. So I've been shooting for 27 years. I'm running my own business since 97. So, it's just a long road. For me, I consider success longevity. For me, so many people want to be famous for a minute or popular and get likes and all that kind of stuff, and that makes you all feel warm and fuzzy. But I've got to tell you, I'm more proud of the fact that I'm still doing this after 27 years, and also for 20 years I've been helping many photographers find their voice, to feed their soul, to feed their mouth and their families, by contributing to them as well. So it depends on what your version of success is, but with most businesses, there is a business formula. You read most business books, it'll tell you 30% cost of goods, 30-odd% give or take of overheads divided into the amount of work that you do, over the year, whatever, and then you're left with 30-40%. The tax man comes along and you're left with X amount. Really, I mean, yes, photography though, once you buy your equipment, going out there and photographing, assuming you've purchased your equipment and all that kind of stuff, our cost of goods are relatively low, especially for the photographer who's not actually giving anything physical, which I certainly do, and I'm sure you'll come to that in a moment. But I strongly believe in the calculating not only with a business formula, but our cost of goods in photography is quite low, but I believe it's at your happy place. What are you prepared to spend time away from your family? What is that worth to you? When is that happy place that in your mind, all right, yes, you would all like to just do our hobby forever and not work and be able to pay all our bills, but that's just not real life. So for me, it's like, all right, quality time away from my family, I put it at X amount or whatever it may be. So there's got to be that factor as well. It's as simple as that. You know, the minute you trade time for money, you are trading the most important thing that you have. More than health is time. After time is health. After health is time with your, like strength of your relationships. Then job fulfillment. For me, it's in that order. So, it just depends. Everyone's a little bit different.
Yeah, I think it's important that we remember that because, for me, it's a different story. I shoot mostly in the studio, so I have very clear-cut overheads. I have my insurance, I have public liability, I have studio costs. If you add all this up, when people come and say, oh, it's a little bit expensive what you charge, then I always say, look, you called Ferrari. If you want a Toyota, I can give you a phone number. I have created that label on my car, thankfully. But you have to get there. And to get there is you have to create a body of work. You can invite your friends and try to create that body of work. You have to do some free work, but the underlying word is work. Work your butt off. And the price should really be two-sided. One is what you said is know what your business is worth. Know what the time away from your loved ones is worth. And then there's this extra bit, which I call the artistic side of things. That needs to be priced as well. Because you create, hopefully over time, a certain look. And that look or that style or that personality, that has to have a price as well. Now, what that price is a very individual thing. If you sit on top of the mountain and take a beautiful photo of a sunset, you can print this, hang this in a gallery, and you can put whatever price on it you want because it's now called art. Now we're talking about art buyers versus someone who says, I charge $55 an hour for your event. It must be something in between.
Well, it really depends. There's so many things that you mentioned there. Even the last bit you said, what differentiates photography to art? I actually had did a webinar only a couple of days ago where I discussed this, the difference between a pose, then adding expression, which makes it a portrait, which means now I can see who you are rather than just what you look like, and then what transfers and what transcends a portrait to art. And for me, art could be defined as a communication, a feeling. And the stronger the feeling, the more value and the more respect, therefore the more you pay. But at the end of the day, what one person will find exhilarating and worth, whatever the amount is, another might find worthless. So, and that's what I said at the start of this conversation. As soon as you make something meaningful, it appreciates in value. So, and the analogy that I give all the time that people understand, now I'm not a parent, but, most parents, at one point, their child came to them with a drawing, and that drawing was probably encouraged by the teacher at school, with kindergarten, primary school, whatever it may be, and then they draw stick figures and a sunset and a horse and a dog or whatever, and mum and dad, here's us, our family, right? And the mother or the father doesn't look at that picture and say, well, the proportions are all wrong. The stick figures, that doesn't represent human life. It's not realistic. The dog looks like, again, a bunch of sticks just joined together. The sunset, the color is bad. The coloring is wrong. Technically, it's actually very imperfect, but it's very sweet and it's pretty and it's beautiful, and it came through the fingers of that child. So, and the same could be said, like the late Karl Lagerfeld, who's obviously one of the most influential designers of all time. When he put his personal signature on something, as opposed to designing a collection for Chanel, which of course he did, is his signature worth more than Chanel, which is already perceived as very high value? Well, of course it is. One is, that this individual has gone out of his or her way to actually put their signature and stamp on that particular work. And then, of course, you've got a company that has Karl Lagerfeld's influence in it, but of course then there's a commodity that's repeatable and again, what's that worth? So I think it really depends. At the end of the day, there's going to be people who would charge a certain amount because they can. Often, in fact, I got a lot of people who come to me and they sort of paint themselves into a corner. They're charging very little and they're just chasing their tail, not making any money. And then I say to you, like, well, tell me something. Do you have to work? And they said, well, no, we've got investments. My partner works. And I'm like, so what's his fault? Well, I love photography. I got into it. I love making people happy. I'm like, well, are you happy? Well, no, like people are ringing me up and it's a hassle and I'm just spending 60 hours a week in Photoshop and all that crap. And I'm like, well, so why don't you just charge what you charge? And if you get it, you get it. Do it as a hobby, but also do it when it means something. But why would you do it under... People will be begging to be in your shoes where you don't have to do photography. Many of us, we rely on photographing for a living.
Yes.
So let's look at that analogy. The classic saying is, well, I'll just charge double and get half the amount. It doesn't work like that. Like, I often say, if you all of a sudden you start at $5,000 and then all of a sudden you charge, and then you charge $5,000 and you get 20 weddings. And then you charge $10,000, would you get 10 weddings? It doesn't work like that. Once you pass a threshold in your genre, no matter how good you are, a lot of people are going to dismiss you as you've just passed my threshold. Like, I know you're good. I know Chanel's great, but I'm not even going to walk in the door because the perception is that it's just too high a price. Now, we know that what we do for a living is priceless and there's a legacy aspect of it, and we can all, again, put our hands together and sing Kumbaya and know how important is what we do is. And of course, we all know that. But the reality is, and I often say that photography is priceless, but what do you charge? So now shit gets real. We have to actually talk about the physical cost of something. So there is a bit of a disconnect. We have to understand that it doesn't work like that. You pass a threshold, some people won't even look at you no matter how good you are. On the flip side, not to confuse the audience here, the perception is that if your price is too low, or if I'm a sophisticated buyer and I come to you and in my mind you should be more expensive and you're not, then chances are there's something wrong with you. No different than your Ferrari analogy, that if I said to you, Steve, that there's a Ferrari outside and I've given you a gift and it's actually worth $5,000, you would say, what's the catch? What's wrong with it?
Yeah.
So there's a crazy psychology in understanding branding and marketing and the perception and then backing it up with quality. And there's something got to be said, even apart from your personal signature, it's really the service, the experience, and that goes with it. Because, the question is, and what you said before, you can get a Toyota, BMW, and a Ferrari, and you can get to the destination, basically, but how do you want to get there? So if you want to get there in style, well, hey, great. So some people will dress themselves up as a Ferrari, but then you can hear the engine not going so good. The trim is a bit worn out. And so it's almost like the internet is being the great equalizer. You can't really fake it too long anymore. Like, you've sort of, there are plenty of people who actually dress themselves up as a Ferrari and they give great service, great business. Their photography is blah, it's vanilla, but they don't know any different. But because everything else is so good and exceptional and so polished, you can disguise decent photography with an incredible experience and charge more. It depends on what you want. And at the end of the day, I don't blame people for doing that. I think it's genius. I think if you can if you can sell poor photography for a lot of money, have at it. I think it's
Oh, absolutely.
It's impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, someone starts out in Australia, we have Harvey Norman. You walk in there, you buy a camera, and you are now a photographer. So what does this person do? How does this person start? Aside from putting the work in, creating a portfolio that holds up, how would you help someone like that? Where should they start? I mean, they cannot charge Jerry Ghionis prices because they simply don't have that experience. They don't have that name tag on their car. They don't have that engine.
So, well, it depends on, let's talk, I mean, there's a wedding conversation, a portrait conversation. So let's talk weddings first because they're a different model. For wedding photography or events, but let's stick to weddings for the moment, and then you can liken the principles based upon whatever genre that you do, if it's within line. And here's the thing, I'm not one of those teachers that will say, well, I'm Jerry Ghionis, it took me 27 years to get there, charge the kind of prices that I do because it's easy for me to say. That's ridiculous. And not that I'm saying the most expensive, I'm actually not, and nor am I the cheapest. All I know is, first of all, you have to have a decent quality of work. As in, I'm not saying amazing, I'm not saying award-winning, I'm not saying you barely have turned the camera on. You need to, rain, hail or shine, produce a consistent body of work to not only represent yourself, but to represent the industry. I wish our industry was regulated. Most hairdressers have to go through training and an apprenticeship to cut hair. Hair grows back. A wedding photograph, you don't come back next week and do it all over again because you screwed up the hairstyle, so to speak. So let's establish that you need to do a decent quality of work and understand storytelling to a certain perspective. Once we get to that level and a good understanding of your camera and all that stuff, I suggest a 3-tier pricing, which is nothing new. It's a universal model that a lot of companies use. It's a good, better, best scenario. I personally believe, and again, depending on where are most of your watchers and listeners from? What's your biggest audience?
All over the place.
Okay, so I'm going to give you American terms in terms of department stores. Okay, sure. So you basically have you have your Ross for Less. It's like a store that sells clothes for less. Well, let's go a bit more universal. You've got Target, right? You've got Macy's, which is sort of like the Australian version of Maya. Then you've got Nordstrom, which is the US version of David Jones, let's say. And then you go up. You've got Bloomingdale's, you've got Saks Fifth Avenue, you've got Nordstrom, all those stores. So what I'm getting at is this: when someone rings you up, very rarely they're ringing you up from a sophisticated level, as in they understand what great photography is. They usually don't. Why they're ringing you is because they can see themselves in your photographs. They love the feeling of them. And that's why they ring you. That's why they email you or they private message you, because they just see something in your work that they respond to.
Yeah.
So when they ring you and basically ask for your pricing, and if you're an elite photographer, an award-winning photographer that's well-known in the industry, well, they don't know that. Very rarely. You can write that in your own bio, but no one gives a shit about what you write about yourself. They're just going to look at the photographs. So that's why I even say, put your bio way, way, way down the priority list of your brochure, of your website. Make it about the work, because the work is what they're going to respond to. So my suggestion is that your entry-level pricing should be attainable in your area that gets them a foot in the door. In other words, Louis Vuitton's cheapest handbag is around $800-900. Most people will probably spend $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 or whatever on a Louis Vuitton bag, but they do have entry-level stuff. Even their little key rings are like friggin' a few $100 and costume jewelry and stuff like that. So what I'm suggesting is, if some of your followers are from America, you've got Macy's, which I'm sure it's a universal company name. Absolutely. Most people know what Macy's is, right? It's a big department store, lots of stuff, lots of brands, not considered ridiculously high-end. It's not Target. It's a nice entry level. One above that is Nordstrom. Nordstrom is sort of like that next level sophistication. Lots of people go to this store. There's lots of really good brands, but you won't feel like it's just a commodity. You'll feel the experience gets a little bit better.
Yeah.
So my advice is start at your Nordstrom price. Let's be specific now. So in the US, an entry-level price, depending on which coast you're on, what city you're in, but let's just pick a price of $29.90, so $2,990. That's your entry-level price. It may be $500 more than arguably what the client wanted to spend, but it's attainable. So with your charm, with your personality, with the way you respond, with your service, you may bridge the gap between what they were initially willing to spend and what they should be looking at least initially spending. In this case, it could be $500 slightly more, and that's not difficult to compute in your head.
Yeah.
So if you're $29.90, your entry-level price is that. The business formula that I believe works in this industry is that your second collection is 50% above the original, which means you're at $29.90. Now you're at, what are we talking about? So $4,490, right? So you're basically $1,500 above that.
Yeah.
Then your third collection should be 100% of the original one. So $29.90, $4,490, and then you got $5,990.
Now, for those who don't think in the terms that you use, can you please help these people and explain what you mean when you talk about collection?
100%. So that's what I was going to get to next. So first of all, you should never, ever call your packages packages. Everyone calls them by packages, and it's a bad word. Here's why it's a bad word, because a package implies complete. I don't need any more. It's like a bag of oranges that it's sealed. I'm saying a collection, a book collection, a record collection grows. So even you're already starting to understand that this is just the beginning. Whenever you refer to your pricing, you must call it an initial investment. Hey, your initial investment includes this. Your initial investment includes that. Now, for wedding photographers, my humble opinion here is I personally do not recommend, and I'm not saying this works for everybody, but I will refuse to shoot a wedding without a physical product. It's a very, very valuable waste of my time, my talent, to just photograph friggin' thousands of shots, delete the blinks and duplicates, and then give them a gallery and say, here, download them, go for your life. For me, that's not a legacy. I'm giving them photographs that they can dispose of with the thumb of their, the thumbing. We thumb photographs every day before we even get out of bed from Instagram and Facebook.
There's there's nothing tangible.
Yeah, so I'm saying my personal perspective is that I will not, and this is not because I'm Jerry Ghionis. I've been doing this since the beginning of my career. I will not photograph a wedding unless it's with a printed product. Now, I know what some people are thinking right now. So let's say, for example, all right, Jerry, look, $3,000, even that's too expensive. I charge $2,000. And that's JPEGs only, and I give them 6-hour coverage. And my competition is doing the same. And here's my advice to those photographers, and I've given this advice for years and years and years. I said, why don't you just include an album? Don't even charge more for it if you think you can't compete. Hear me out. So you've got, now when I say $2,000, I mean 1990, right? But let's say you've got a $2,000 photographer here, $2,000 photographer here. One gives them a 6-hour coverage and JPEGs only. This one does the same, and then I come to this person and say, I want you to include a full day coverage at a minimum, groom's coverage, bride's home, assuming it's a heterosexual couple, groom's home, bride's home, ceremony, locations, and the first hour of the reception. This 6-hour photographer, the problem with that is that brides and grooms will look at what they want into the reception and say, I want the photographer into the reception for the speeches, the first dance, and the father-daughter dance, mother-son dance. That's 10 o'clock. Then they work backwards. So 6 hours before 10 o'clock is going to be 4 p.m. The ceremony's at 5. They barely have 15 minutes at the bride's house. No groom's coverage. So all of a sudden, this photographer thinks they're winning because they have to work less, and they don't give an album. Where this photographer, I say, work more and give them a product. And I say, what the hell? I'm going to be working for 12 hours on this day or 10 hours. And now you want me to pay for example, I use Graphy Studio. They can do a 30-sided young book for like $300. So now we take out of the $2,000, we take away some of the gross revenue, $300 out of this for product, cost of goods. Now you're $300 less behind and you're working more hours. But the initial collection includes the first 20 sides of the album. Once I tell you and I teach how you can plan to see that they're going to buy more, shoot for a story, then you pitch a 60, 80, 100-sided album and you get the couple to choose 20 sides only. It's an impossible task. Now, I'm not one of those photographers that won't tell the couple that they're going to be shown more, that they're not going to buy more. I'm brutally honest. In fact, these words that I'm about to tell you will make people a lot of money if they listen to me. I say the following words to every single client. I say this: my challenge is to take the most beautiful and meaningful photographs you can possibly imagine, not only meet your expectations, but exceed them. Your challenge is to resist. Basically, what I'm getting at is I'm saying the better I do, the more you will spend. In layman's terms, do you want me to do a shitty job so you buy less? Do you want me to not flatter you, not tell the story? Like, what problem would you prefer? Doing a shit job so you buy less, or exceeding your expectations and you want everything? So, and notice that I said the first 20 sides. Adding that word, first 20 sides, means it's only the beginning. So now I've got an entry level where I'm at $19.90. I'm at that, call it the Macy's price. Now I'm actually cheaper than the other photographer because I'm actually including more, therefore my value is better. So my unique selling proposition is I give you more hours, unlimited locations, grooms and brides coverage, and I'm giving you an album of the first 20 sides. Therefore, you know what? I'm actually charming and more fun than the other guy or the other girl as well. Now, this person thinks that you're doing the wrong thing because, in the sense that, well, why? I'm not going to waste $300 of my own, to buy the album. And I'm telling you, I've taught photographers this, and they said, well, so-and-so taught me, and they said double my prices, and I did it, and I had no weddings. It was crickets. I'm saying, well, I'm telling you, don't do that. Charge the same, include an album, and then, like I said, 50% above that original $2,000 price. So you've got now 3 collections, 2, 3, and 4,000. When you start booking your top one more than the middle one, then it's time to leapfrog. Then you go to 3 to 4.5 to 6. And at one point, you'll find that entry level where you're like, you know what? Yes, I've found my threshold. I've found what my Nordstrom price is. Therefore, that's the ceiling. And then as you make more money, you get better investments, or as your health permits, at one point you'll say, screw it, I'm going to start at $4,000 and I'm going to start at this. And it just depends. So that's just a never-ending journey that we'll all be on. But I believe that is the way, at least if you're talking about a wedding, that's the way you should start. And I've given this advice, and there's so much more to it, but I'm giving you the cliff notes as to how to structure it.
I think that is super valuable. Peter Hurley said something that I thought was interesting last week that goes exactly with what you said. He said, if your average price doesn't scare yourself a little bit, it's too low.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually very, very smart. And especially when you change your mind or your mindset from saying packages and you go to collections. I think there's 2 things that happen. It's what you said yourself, because we have different collections and different collections have different values, right?
Yeah.
But what that word collection also means, aside from being flexible, it also has an artistic flair to it.
Yeah, there's a prestige to it.
It has another emotional undertone.
Yes,
and when we talk about selling, we all know that products do not sell. What sells is emotions.
Yep, 100%.
Right? So what do you think what someone needs before they approach people and ask for money?
Oh, man, where do I begin?
I'm sorry.
No. I mean, I like to think the business of photography like a battle, right? So a lot of photographers, the biggest problem that most photographers make, they say, I want to be a professional photographer, so I'll start my own business. Boom. First mistake. You want to be a business person, and then you choose photography as the vehicle. As in, am I a photographer in business or a business person in photography? So there's many ways of looking at it. Then, in other words, as far as like a battle or a war is concerned, it's like going out to battle. You've got no sword, no shield. You've got no castle, no moat, no nothing. And you're like, you're all passionate, and people talk about follow your passion. And we're like, well, you need a freaking skill set before you look in the mirror and say, yes, I can, and try to save the world. So
get a helmet first.
Yeah. I think that there's, there's so much optimism and pessimism in many ways in the world at the moment. Optimism in the sense that everyone's a dreamer. Everyone wants to be in that 0.1%. I want to be that social media influencer. I want to be this, that, whatever. Everyone's aiming at, and it's like, in LA, everyone wants to be an actor and everyone wants to be a singer or a model, and very, very few make it. What happened to just doing the work? What happened to just going to the gym and doing the repetition and understanding nutrition and all that kind of stuff, and then dismissing it because I don't get muscles very quickly, I don't lose weight quickly? So I feel like what we have to do is set ourselves up for battle. First of all, you need an administrative workflow. What happens if you are busy? When the phone rings, when you get an email, when you get a message, how do you answer it? Do you just do a template answer? Do you text them back? How do you consolidate? Do you have a program that you do it? When you make money, you have to know that some of that money is not yours. Your accountant will tell you 20% of actually what you make is not even yours. So put it in a separate bank account. Don't even touch it. When that quarter comes, or whether it's a monthly GST or quarter or annual, and you've got 30 grand in the bank account, and then you overestimated, the taxes are now 20 grand as opposed to 30, then you can get that 10 grand and buy that new Z6 II and the Z7 II and that new MacBook Pro. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many lessons there. But so what we have to do is, you almost have to pretend, if you are busy, could you handle it? What happens when someone books? Do you have a contract? Do you have is there a pre-wedding meeting? Is there a, liability? There's insurance. What are the administrative procedures that basically happen? How do you maximize sales? What happens if you have objections? Like, there is so much to this business. And here's the thing. I know this sounds crazy, but so many photographers have to be their own boss. Could it be that you're creative? You love the ride and the journey, but the business is simply not for you? I've told people that to their face. I think you're a brilliant photographer. I really think you should work for someone else. You have guilt in asking for money. You don't like the process of marketing. You don't like the hustle. And quite simply, whenever you procrastinate on something, it means you don't like it. So admit it to yourself. If you love something, you will find the time. I don't care how busy you are. Yeah. People will find the time. So there's again, if you're talking about a wedding genre, but it could be likened to other things. You have to sort of be capable of that, of doing the work. So I would encourage assisting a photographer, carrying the bags of an experienced photographer. And that's why I created my online training site. Like, almost to the day, I was, I think, one of the first individual photographers to start an online training website. So 13 years now, I've been doing online training. And the reason being is that I was doing workshops and seminars all over the world in person. I was that guy that said, if you got a question, there's my email address, just ask me. And oh my God, I spent all day, every day answering questions, because I learnt the art, craft, and business of photography, and I'm still learning, we all are. But I knew quite a lot very quickly in my career. So I'd give people the shortcuts to them. And then I'm like, people always wanted to know, like, Jerry, I want to assist you. Can I come and carry your bags? So I'm like, well, let me just film my weddings and you can come along with me. Yeah. And you can virtually assist me. So whether it's actually assisting or, watching my training or anyone else, I don't really care whose it is, know the process, know what you have to do. And my ex-boss told me, my one and only boss said, a shit shot's better than no shot. So at least know what to get, how you get there, okay, whatever. And then once you get that, then you understand that there's a whole process to the business of photography. And then you spend the rest of your life finessing that, you just get to the destination a lot quicker. My advice is, and you'll often hear people say, do a business plan. And there are people who are just made that way, that they look at their competition, they look at the pricing structure, demographic, and I'm all for that. But I can simplify it for everybody right now. Whatever business venture you're looking at, ask yourself these questions. How do I make the most amount of money for the least amount of time, for the least amount of investment, for the most amount of fun? It's really that simple. When that last one, when you don't have fun anymore, because most of us got into photography not really for business, because we turned our hobby into a business. When it's not fun anymore, and it's parts of our job, let's face it, that are not fun. social media and keeping up with that and doing new samples and photoshopping or whatever it is that anyone does out there, there's parts of our job that are not fun. And I'm just saying that there are so many businesses out there that help you become more efficient. And it's like, I look at all the software that I'm using right now and I'm like, how amazing is it that we can do what we do now? And back in the day, everything was done very manually and analog. I mean, and then people saying, oh, it's so tough now. I'm like, I almost sound really old. Like, I had to shoot 10 shots per roll of film on my RB67. I had to get the negatives back and match the proofs. And if they blinked, it was my fault. Cross the negative out, chop them up, hand stick them in an album I made myself. And then when I designed the album, get a piece of paper, draw a box and put a number in it and say, would you like that photo over here in your album? Mask those negatives, get the prints back, put them on a mat, assemble the album yourself. And now it is so easy, it's ridiculous. I'm just saying that you know, there is so much. I think people just go out there for battle, they want to get the work, and then, oh, holy shit, it comes in, now what do I do? And also there are so many people teaching it now. I mean, everyone's a freaking expert. So you've got to sort of
yeah.
You've got to do your homework and decipher who you want to listen to. I mean, I'm not saying me, it could be anyone, but just make sure that you're a shortcut to success. If you read any business book, it'll tell you, it'll show you to find a mentor, find someone that's actually, you know, walk down that path before you, and there's a shortcut to success, and then you'll forge your own path. Because ultimately in any industry, let alone artistic endeavor, I believe that we all start by imitating, then we emulate, and then if we're lucky in our career, handful of times, maybe more, we might innovate. But it's one of those things. And when you're starting in photography, you have no choice but to be different. So let me explain. So if someone opened up a studio next to me, or there was literally 100 photographers in my area, and they were all really good. And if we likened ourselves to a precious stone, let's call ourselves a diamond, okay? We're all diamonds. And we can't get a magnifying glass and understand the difference between cut, color, and clarity. And then all this young punk comes along, who's nowhere near as good as the rest of us, but offers that little point of difference. And it could be poor photography with bad filters on there, which we've all seen that, but they look different. So now, if you put a tray of diamonds in front of a client, then all of a sudden this little ruby, that just the red little ruby in amongst all those diamonds stand out. Why? Because they're different, not because they're better, because that person has no choice. They can't be as good or better. So there's only three choices in business: be the first, be the best, or be different. And of course, you've got the other end of the scale where, you know, I was quite profound. I spoke to a millionaire once. He just sold his business for multi-millions of dollars, and I said, "What's the key to making money?" And you would think, I was waiting for him to just reaffirm what I was thinking: quality, service, blah blah blah. And he said to me, repetition and mediocrity.
Okay.
It bewildered me, and I'm not saying I agree with that, but in many industries I do, in the sense that the ability to repeat a product and the consistency of that product is important. Mediocrity, because it sells more than the 1%ers. You're going to find more people in Target than you find in Chanel. Yes. Now, I'm not saying that there's not room for the Chanels of this world or whatever it may be, but everyone wants to be Chanel. And in trying to get there, they're a bad version of it, and they're barely a Target or a Macy's or whatever it is. So I find that, yeah, it's almost like you're trying to, you know, go to continue the metaphor, is fight a battle that you've got no chance of winning unless your strategy is, you know, a very, very good. So, I mean, as you can see, I'm very passionate about this subject because I've actually mentored tens of thousands of photographers in my career, maybe more, and I've actually spent personal one-on-one time with a lot of these individuals as well, where I can see the problem very quickly, and and I'll tell them, no, this is the wrong way to do it. And it's so funny. I had this this student come to a 5-day workshop of mine, and very quiet. I'm like, oh, maybe she's not enjoying it, and not really sociable. At the end of the 5 days, she comes up to me and she says, Jerry, thank you for a life-changing week. I'm like, oh, thank God she liked the workshop.
Okay.
Now I know what it takes to be successful in our industry, she said. I do not want to become a professional photographer.
Oh, wow.
And I found it. She says, thank you, because you've saved 20, 30 years of my life. I will continue doing it as a hobby. I might charge here and there, but now I know what it takes to do it properly. Hell no. And I found that very
eye-opening,
without being condescending, very mature, very wise. I thought that was incredible. Whereas most of us are like, and again, everyone wants to be their own boss. And I'm like, man, I learned a lot for the company that I worked for originally. And everyone wants to, again, I think we're seeing too many dreams. We're only seeing everyone's life through a filter, as in, I'm only seeing your best meal, your best holiday, your best whatever. So everyone thinks that their life is not worthy and they're shit and everyone else is amazing. So you feel like you don't measure up. Whereas you get the people who are trying to be millionaires, trying to look like millionaires, and the actual millionaires are wearing shitty friggin', 3-year-old wife
because
beater,
they don't need to show off.
Singlet. Yes, exactly. So
they don't need to pretend. That's the thing. There needs to be a good amount of honesty, self-honesty in play as well. And I mentioned it on this show many times before. Being a professional creative means that you have to be happy to spend 80-90% in stuff that has nothing to do with your craft, as in marketing, selling, making sure that contracts are signed. Once you've done a job and you delivered your job and you're hooray and you're dancing around for a short moment, be prepared to sit down, because now you have to somehow organize the next job. And that starts with phone calls, emails, and. So you're ending up maybe shooting 10% of your actual time that you're actually pushing a button. And the other 90%, you're everything but.
I think it's very true. I find that, the analogies that I make is that when you start, as a photographer, you just want to be a pro, right? Like I want to call myself a photographer. I want to make a living. Then you get over that hurdle, and then you want to make profit, because you realize it's not how much money you make, it's how much you get to keep. You can turn over $1 million and net 30 grand, or you can actually turn over 100 grand and net 40 grand. So I don't know about you, but I think the second way is a lot easier. So you want to be, so there's there's profit, and then there's purpose.
Yes.
Unlike not like, you want purpose. You want to make a difference to the people that you're photographing. It's more than just clicking the camera and making someone look pretty. You want to make it meaningful. Or you can make the other perspective and say, first you just want to make it. You want to survive as a photographer. Then you want to master, which you'll do for the rest of your life. And then, oh my God, I've lost the thing. And then you want to matter. That's the same perspective. So I think just too many people want life-changing epiphanies for the whole world before they even, before anything else. So putting one foot in front of the other and just doing the work and setting yourself up for success, rather than just going out there and trying to get the work and then all of a sudden, what do I do now? I think we need to filter our understanding a little bit better before we go out there and get a huge amount of work, because there's, like I said, we only look at the success stories of the people who've made it, and it's very easy for us to believe the people who've gone from nothing or zero to hero. I'm not saying they don't deserve it, but there's a rare combination of elements and hard work and all these different things that get to there. But what happened to just doing the work? What happened to just learning the craft, learning the art, craft and business of photography, and have longevity? Don't aim to be popular, aim to be here at the, in another 30, 40 or whatever years you're going to do it in. So yeah.
What we often see is those overnight successes, truth be told, 20 years in the making.
Yeah. Well, but that's a thing though, that so many of us, our perception of success is very different. I mean, how many people, you look at Robin Williams, who was such an incredible genius comedian and done so many things for the change pop culture with his humor and TV shows and movies, and his physical health and his mental health, and all of a sudden he's gone. And then you've got, I forget the gentleman's name, it's just lost me now, Anthony Bourdain, probably one of the most admired human beings and jobs in the world to travel and look at new experiences and culture, and we would think, what's wrong?
Yeah,
troubled, right? So there's something that got to be said. I think that the underestimation of mental strength and health, I think as a community and as a country, as a world, we don't speak about it enough. We demonize it. And I was having this conversation a couple of days ago on a different webinar where I was asked to sort of do the end seminar of a 2-3 day series. And a lot of people were expecting me to show pretty pictures and how I made them. I'm like, guys, if you want pretty pictures, you can Google me and just go find them. And I just talked into the camera the whole time, talked about my struggles and what I went through and how people's perception of someone like me or others, it's all perfection and it's all flawless. And it's just not true.
Yeah.
In the pandemic in the last year, I mean, let's face it, very few of us have actually thrived and made money. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, I had COVID. I had it very bad, and short of dying, I survived it. And I've made use of my time, and I'm literally have got many tentacles to my octopus, so to speak, of what I'm doing. Lots of things that I'm doing and I'm really excited about, and monetizing and all that kind of stuff. But too many of us are so isolated where we don't get any support or mentorship or anything from anyone. We start our business too early in our relative infancy, and then all of a sudden we flounder for the rest of our careers. Then a pandemic hits, if you've done one genre, like if you're a sports photographer only, if you're a wedding photographer only, events, concerts, you're dead. You're done.
Yeah.
So in other words, like, I often say to people, start a business and keep on pretending like your life depends on it, because it does. So pretend you'll go hungry, because one day you might go hungry. So, and here it is, with even people who've saved for a rainy day. Melissa and I in that boat, we had reserves, and we were, saving money to put a deposit on a house and all that kind of stuff. And okay, we didn't buy a house, but we've survived, and we've eaten into those profits and that money, but we've survived. But I'm telling you that, again, at the start of this conversation, I said that the most people who know me, my biggest success are my relationships that I have with my wife, my family, my friends. But, so you've got to understand what the dream is, because the dream from the outside looking into someone else's Instagram is not real life. It's a curated filter on someone else's best moments. And it almost is worse, because popularity, how do I say? I'd rather be popular with my wife than get 10,000 likes in a day because it makes me feel good. Because at the end of the day, it might give you literally a second of, oh, that's nice. And then how do I pay the bills? What do I do now? Like, what's next?
Yeah, there's a big disconnect between ego and reality. And we all need our ego stroke. That's normal. We all need our high fives. We all need our cuddles. But we have to decide, and I think that comes a little bit with age. I'm 54 now, and I don't need to pretend anymore, because I will not and never will have beautiful long curly hair or a modelly chin or this and that. But I'm okay with that. I'm at that age where my level of giving a shit is much, much lower than it was when I was 25.
Well, first of all, you have a great jawline, and then you can buy a wig, so you can have it all if you want.
and I have to send you the $10 for saying exactly what I asked you to say beforehand. Jerry, I took so much of your time. I think some of the things that you mentioned are so valuable. And at some point we have to come to an end. I think you and I, we could go on for ages, but how can people connect with you? How can they learn more from you? I will link your website and everything in the description below, but is there somewhere else where they should go? Should they go to your Instagram to see what a fabulous life you live?
Well, I actually, if I do share my life, it's usually with my puppies because they make me so happy.
Cool.
But look, there's many things. Obviously, you'll link to a lot of the stuff that we do. So we do everything from COVID permitting. We do 5-day workshops, usually once a year here in Vegas. I have my training site that's been running for 13 years now that you can subscribe to, and we'll make sure that we give you guys a promo code that you can get on there for a bit of a discount, considering the times that we're living in. And also, independent of my training website, that my subscription-based website, we've released in the last several months, actually before COVID, an independent product that once you purchase it, you've got it for good. It's called The Art of Wedding Photography, the business of wedding photography, and then also watching me shoot real weddings. And we'll link to that as well. We'll look after you. But we've also got, to be honest, what I'll do for you, and now that I've said it out loud, I've got to do it. I will give you a link where your subscribers can actually download watch a free wedding. So watch me in action on a wedding day on the house, just so that if you're just started in the industry and you're doing wedding photography and you're thinking, where do I start? Then this might be a good sort of place to start, because you can see what I do. Certainly I shoot portraits and fashion and boudoir and other stuff that I teach in my training site. But yeah, we'll look after you. We'll hook you up with a few links that you guys can have some fun, get started, and all that kind of stuff. So it'll be good.
That's brilliant. If you are very good at weddings, then that means that you're very good at a lot of different disciplines. So it's much, much harder than people might think. It's not just putting on a suit and running around and snapping a little bit with a little flash on top.
Well, yeah, I really think that as you said, for some reason in the professional photography world, there are a lot of people that frown upon wedding photographers, almost dismissing us as the karaoke of singers.
Stupid.
And I've got to say, yeah, like anyone who shot a wedding and ended up doing fashion or whatever it may be, like even Joe McNally, who I've been teaching with lately and doing a few things with, and I remember him talking about his experience shooting a wedding, and his assistant turned to him and said, "You look like an old beaten down rodeo clown," after he shot that wedding. And it's such a vivid picture. And I'm like, and that's the thing, is that for me, I chose wedding photography when I started in my career strategically. I love people. Everyone loves a wedding. At least I thought so and think so. And I think it'd be a good training ground for me for other genres, because as you said, if you photograph a wedding, you're photographing a wedding, you're photographing a portrait, you're photographing men, women, groups, children, newborn sometimes, streetscapes, landscapes, detail shots, under time constraints, weather constraints, rain, hail or shine, you have to get it done. Yeah. Because of that incredible grounding, I pretty much can shoot anything within reason, but I specialize in people. So funnily enough, people here in Vegas, I'm actually known as a fashion portrait photographer more than weddings, even though that the industry knows me. Oh, you're that wedding portrait guy. Here I photograph performers. I'm getting very well known in the performer community, working on several projects right now that I'm really excited about. So it doesn't matter what the label is. I'm an artist. I'm a photographer, and I think that we just need to find the art in business. And so when you're struggling to come up with the ideas in business, say, well, creatively, how would I get my clients? Creatively, how do I get my work in front of this person or this executive or that company? Think creatively. So for me, I just love ideas. I love talking about ideas. I love manifesting concepts and relationships. So for me, I try to enjoy that journey. And many things that I don't like to do, my wife loves it. So she loves the administrative side. Even though that I run a very, very busy studio, did all of that work, thankfully she loves that administrative side, and we keep in our own lanes, and we I'm the driver, she's the engine, my filmmaker, he's the fuel, and together we drive nicely. So find your team, one step at a time, and stay strong and be healthy. And remember, you don't have to be the best. You simply have to be better than last week.
And that is a never-ending journey. If you believe that you reached the peak of the mountain, guess what happens? Once you're up there, you see a mountain that is higher, which you didn't see before because you were down in the valley.
Yep, 100%.
So, Jerry, thank you so much.
All good, man. All good.
For all of you out there, the last and the only thing I can say is stay safe, look after yourself, and take your time to find out what you're really good at and what you really enjoy. Because at the end of the day, you have only so many hours in a day, you only have so many days in a life. And you have to find what puts a smile on your face every single day. With that said, go out and create something awesome.